Week 14 starts and sleepers are here. We're going to be giving you the Thursday night football preview. But Dave, before we do all this fun football stuff, it is the holiday season. Yesterday, I found myself watching a couple of Christmas movies. So I watched the movie Scrooged with Bill Murray. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I
It's
have.
solid.
I'm a
It's all
bit of a
right.
Scrooge myself, so yeah,
Yeah,
I like Scrooge.
And then I saw Gremlins, which people have always said it's solid. It's not. It's absolute dumpster fire. I hated it. So yeah, if you don't like Gremlins or you do like Gremlins, whatever, hit us in the comments.
Talking about the
Uh,
original, like, 1980s Gremlins?
is there a remake that I do not know about?
I don't know, I just figured I don't
No,
know
yeah,
how
it's
you
definitely
are
that
just
one.
watching
It's
Gremlins for the first time.
it wasn't the first. I saw it once as a kid, and then I saw it now as an adult, and I really didn't remember anything. But all I was seeing is that as the credits were going, Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy and all these people that were part of like major motion pictures like Indiana Jones and Star Wars and stuff like that were part of this. And I was just like, what? Like, this is what they did? This is what they came up with? So it made me ask the question, Dave, what Christmas movie would you rather watch than tonight's Steelers Patriots game that has an implied total of 30 points tonight? We got the Bailey Zappi, Mitch Trubisky matchup.
Yeah, I think I saw the line moved up to 30.5, so, we're getting
Watch
steamed
out.
up here, could be a good one. I mean, I'm gonna watch the game, it's I'm a degenerate, I'm gonna watch, like, the worst football game of the season on a Thursday night, but if I had to watch any Christmas movie besides it, there's really only 2 Christmas movies that I, like, really like, and I rewatch a lot. That's Home Alone and Elf. I know, like,
Yep.
super basic, they're great movies, I grew up watching Home Alone. Elf came out when I was in, junior high, like that one, but like I said, I'm a little bit of a Scrooge, without getting, like, too personal, the whole, like, coming from a broken home. The holidays were just stressful for me. I'm trying to now that I'm older, make like good Christmas memories with my wife and like reignite the Christmas spirit, but I'm a Halloween guy, man.
Halloween, you really prefer just scaring the crap out of little kids
That's
as
it.
opposed to
Yeah.
cookies and milk.
Yeah, as opposed to reliving through my childhood trauma. Yeah, I'll just scare little kids and induce trauma.
I love it.
Did
I
I get a
love
little
it.
too dark for the show today?
It's definitely a dark start for the show. Definitely a dark start for the
Happy
show.
holidays. I do love Christmas music though. I think that more than the Christmas
Okay.
movies. A big fan of the Frank Sinatra Christmas album. Got that one on
Yes.
vinyl. We spin that around the house quite a bit. And I found this playlist on Spotify, Jazz Christmas Classics. So it's
Ooh,
not
okay.
like it's very like soft piano, it's all instrumental, no vocals or anything like that. Great background music this time of year, I will say that.
I dig. Are you an eggnog guy? I've recently become an eggnog guy.
I love eggnog. Actually, every single morning this time of year, I drink my protein shake after my workout, and this time of year, I put a splash of eggnog in my vanilla protein shake just to get a little festive in
Mm,
December.
can't
It's
do
kind of
that.
gross.
Why do you do it then? Why do you do it if it's kind of gross?
Just it's a festive start to the morning. Just
No.
non-alcoholic eggnog, of course. I'm not starting my morning off with vodka and a protein
Well, now you're
shake.
just making all kinds of bad decisions. I'm fully out on that. All right, let's take a look at tonight's Thursday night football game. We've got some sleeper picks here for you. I'm going to run through 3 of my favorite sleeper picks for tonight's game. You
Under.
can yeah, you know what? You'd think. You can head on over to Sleeper, go into the app, and whenever you take a look at any of these players that are playing in tonight's game, you will see the options there for you to go over or under the allotted amount that they are giving you there, and you can win up to 100x on your payouts here over on sleeper.com. And you'll find the link for this promo in the description of the show, whether you're listening or watching. But the picks I'm looking at tonight: Ezekiel Elliott over 2.5 receptions. That's not a crazy line. And Ramondre Stevenson is out. Last week we saw Zeke get 4 catches on 40 yards. The Pittsburgh defense have allowed 3 receptions to running backs in 75% of their games. I'm not expecting a Bailey Zappi passing fest here where he's going to be hitting receivers downfield. So expect some of those dump offs to Zeke. Dave, I think you might like this one because this is your
I will
boy.
say though,
Yeah.
playing devil's advocate on this one a little
Yeah.
bit. This is Bill Belichick we're talking about, and I know a lot of people are just expecting. And again, a lot of people are going to listen to the show Friday morning, and I could have eggnog all over my face by then.
Ew.
But But this is Belichick, and we know his deployment of running backs can be a little suspect and a little hard to predict. So, would it surprise you all that much if maybe Zeke just kind of gets the early down work and all the passing down work falls in Ty Montgomery's lap? So,
I
I
mean,
think this is kind of a savvy line here, the 2.5, because Ty Montgomery might end up seeing all of the running back targets.
the thing is that I would have agreed with you, but they had the opportunity to use Ty Montgomery last week, and they really didn't. And then we've seen Zeke getting passing down work earlier in the season, even with Ramondre Stevenson on the field. So I'm not overly worried about that. I do think this is a pretty nice line for him to get over 2.5
I
receptions tonight. But I
I'll
get
say
what you're
I
saying.
would I'd take the over, but also, when a player gets injured mid-game and they kinda have to scramble, that's a little bit different than having a week to prep. I think having the week to
Fair.
prep, we might see a bigger Ty Montgomery usage than expected, but again, we're speculating here, and I think 2.5. I'd probably take the over, but it's not one that I feel, like, crazy comfortable about.
All right, next one on here is your boy, often referred to as your doppelganger, Mitch Trubisky, over 17 and a half completions here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Patriots defense are allowing an average of 23 completions to quarterbacks per game. All but one quarterback to play a full game versus New England Patriots this year have gone over this total. And that one quarterback that didn't was Tommy DeVito, who hit exactly 17 completions. So I do think that we see Mitchell Trubisky go over that 17 and a half completions today, especially we've seen.
Just to corroborate that a bit, he's
Yeah,
hit over 20 completions in every single start last year that he didn't exit early with an injury. So,
there we go.
yeah, I mean, he was averaging over 20 completions per game last year. No reason to think that we can't see that again this year.
And then the last sleeper pick for the Thursday night football game, Diontae Johnson over 41 and a half receiving yards. He's averaged 59 receiving yards per game with Mitchell Trubisky. We've seen it like the second that Trubisky goes in at quarterback, Diontae Johnson is his primary target. George Pickens basically just becomes invisible. Pat Fryermuth does get some work as well, but really they're going up against a Patriots defense that stops the run really well. And that secondary is awful. So I'm expecting a lot of targets, receptions, and a decent amount of yardage there for Diontae Johnson. So over 41 and a half seems like a really nice line, especially considering the Patriots have allowed 19 receivers to surpass this total this season. we
Sheesh.
we have not played 19 games. Just wanted to do some quick math there.
And let's not discredit the Mitch Trubisky, Allen Robinson connection that we saw going back in Chicago. Maybe are we looking at Allen Robinson as a potential sleeper tonight? Of course not, but I just had to get it in
I don't, why would I respond to that? Why would I respond to the third or fourth option on a Pittsburgh Steelers team
Back to
in a
back
game?
years with 150 targets and 1,000 yards. All I'm saying.
Sure, sure, sure.
No,
I'm just
don't
gonna
start
leave it
Allen
at that.
Robinson, guys. This
There
if you
we
can't
go.
see right now, my tongue is in my cheek.
Editing. Let's remove that portion of the podcast. Dave, let's go to our
Joke's
week.
on you. I'm the editor, and we're keeping it.
All right, let's get to our week 14 starts and sleepers of the week here. We're going to start at the running back position. Dave, why don't you hit us with your first running back start?
Starting Alexander Mattison this week, and a
What?
guy that I was kind of fading a little. I know, growth. Guy that I was fading a little bit in the preseason, but the Raiders are giving up the sixth most points per
Did
game
you
to
say
opposing
growth
running
or
backs.
did you say gross with a lisp?
I do have a list. I don't know what came out. I think I meant to say growth, and gross came out.
No, you definitely said growth. I was just
Yeah.
poking fun, but now you made it weird. So keep going. Keep talking about Alexander Madison.
Well, the Raiders giving up the sixth most points per game to opposing running backs, and some people are going to say, well, the Raiders' defense has been better as of late. Well, they're giving up more over the last 2 weeks than they are over the season, so they haven't really gotten that much better. I'll even go ahead and say that I like Ty Chandler in this matchup as
Yep.
well. But I'm going to give the slight edge to Alexander Madison because of last week's workload, where we saw him see 12 opportunities in favor of Ty Chandler's 6 opportunities. And looking at what Vegas is telling us, it's a 3-point line, so should be pretty close. Hopefully, provide some passing down work that could go in Madison's favor. I've got Madison right now in my rankings ahead of Najee Harris and Ezekiel Elliott, both playing tonight. So I know some people are looking at the projected workloads for both of these guys. I'm going to go with the ceiling play in Alexander Madison. So if you're trying to set your lineups before Thursday night football and you've got Madison and then Najee or Zeke, I prefer Madison over both of them.
Do you feel better that Joshua Dobbs is still starting at quarterback for the Vikings over any of the Nick Mullins or Jaron Hall? Did that kind of play a part here in your decision?
I do like Jaron Hall. I kind of would like to see what he can do. We know that rushing quarterbacks like Josh Dobbs he's been rushing a lot this year. That can negatively impact running backs a little bit. But at the end of the day, Alexander Mattison hasn't been scoring at the goal line anyway. So it's not like he's losing goal line touches to Joshua Dobbs because he hasn't had them regardless. So, there's not going to be quite as much check down work, not quite as much goal line work, but we've still seen that the team favors Mattison. And this is just a good matchup where I'm okay firing him up.
Yeah, I think I've also got him as a top 24 running back this week. At the running back start for me, I'm going to go with Javonte Williams going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. And this one might seem a bit more obvious, but Javonte's had some down games over the past couple weeks. But at least what we have seen on the peripheral numbers here is that Denver remains a really run heavy team. They're going to try to control the clock in this game going up against the Chargers. They do not want to try to get into some sort of a shootout with Justin Herbert. What the Broncos have really done a good job at is controlling the game script when they've been going up against these tough offenses. The defense has improved dramatically, but we've also seen that Javonte Williams has been an RB2 or better in 4 of his last 6 games. The other 2 games where he wasn't very good was Minnesota and Cleveland, two teams that are very good against running backs, particularly in fantasy football. And so I do think that what we're going to be able to see here is one, the Broncos lead the NFL in targets to the running back. So even if this game does end up having to be something where the Broncos have to pass a bit more, that still favors the running backs here. And if Javonte Williams is the guy that's going out there and is going to be out on the field for the majority of the running back snaps, you can expect to see him get some passing work. He's had at least 3 receptions in 5 of his last 6 games. For me, he's my RB16 on the week. I'm a bit more confident in Javonte Williams than I have been in previous weeks. For me, it's all about the matchup, and the usage just continues to be there, Dave.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of disappointment with Javonte Williams. He hasn't looked great early in the season, but I think people are just so quick to discredit that he tore his ACL last year. And he might be looking at more of a traditional recovery where it takes kind of over a year to get comfortable on those legs again. We got so spoiled with Brees Hall, just looking like he was shot out of a cannon as soon as he hit the field in week 1. Javonte Williams is starting to look more and more comfortable every single week. He's looked good over the last few weeks. It might not have translated into fantasy production, but he looks like Javonte Williams of old. He's a guy that, yeah, I'm starting in this matchup and kind of looking at as a guy who could really be just a plug and play option down the stretch here.
Yeah, the schedule for the Broncos, especially for the running backs, is actually really solid. So I really liked. I think that the teams that have survived and they're going to make the fantasy playoffs and that have Javonte Williams as maybe that RB3 on their team, they
Mhm.
might get a little bit more production than expected here later on in the season.
Completely
Dave,
agree.
Dave, why don't you hit us with your running back sleeper of the week? This one, I kind of dig it because I feel like he's just always been the sleeper throughout the season each week. He's always on that fringe.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard, he has back-to-back games with 20 plus points. And right now, going up against the Saints, they've been giving up a lot over the last few weeks. 6 most points to running backs over the last 4 weeks, third most over the last 2 weeks. And a lot of that came in losses to the Lions, Falcons, and Vikings. But Deonta Foreman had a good game against them in a win. So they are not this shutdown defensive front that we've seen in years past. I like Chuba Hubbard in this matchup. Since Frank Reich and Deuce Staley, the running backs coach, were both fired, Hubbard completely took over the backfield. He had 25 carries to Miles Sanders' 8 carries last week. And like I said, back to back games with 20 plus points, despite both games being losses. So right now, we're just looking at the volume here. I think Chuba Hubbard is going to see a decent amount of volume. You can plug him in as your RB2, should see a hefty workload. Some guys I've got him ranked ahead of this week. Devin Singletary, who is now back in a timeshare with Dameon Pierce. Tajay Spears, assuming Derrick Henry does play. I know a lot of people are going to get enamored with the Tajay Spears usage last week, but I think that if Henry is active, he's going to see his normal workload. And Keaton Mitchell is a guy that I really, really like. And Alfredo, you're going to talk about him a little bit. But I think I like the safety of a guy like Chuba Hubbard over Keaton Mitchell. If you're swinging for upside, yeah, go ahead and plug Mitchell in. But I think that you can look at kind of a 8 to 10 point floor for Chuba Hubbard. And as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, he's got that ability to hit 20 plus points as well.
The streak remains alive, where at
I had
some
to.
point
I
during
had
the
to.
show, you say something about a guy that I'm going to talk. At least this time it wasn't negative.
Now, let me at least peek behind the curtain here.
Kind of was negative.
I do prep for these before I see your sleeper. So this isn't me maliciously doing this. I didn't realize until it was coming out of my mouth. I was like, shoot, Alfredo sent me his guys last night, and he's going to talk about Keaton Mitchell.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Tell us why Keaton Mitchell's a better start than Chuba Hubbard, Alfredo.
There we go. Hey, yeah, sure, why not? I don't know. I honestly, I don't have him as a better start than Chuba Hubbard this week. I actually have him one spot behind Chuba because I do agree with you that there is a bit of more of a safety that's there with Chuba Hubbard, but I think that the upside for Keaton Mitchell is just something we just can't ignore. And I think that every time Keaton Mitchell starts to get hot, there's always something that kind of pulls us back. Either there was that one game where the usage really wasn't there, or now we've got a bye week where all of a sudden people forget that his role just continued to grow. But we've seen the snap rate has increased every single week. He led the team in snaps and carries back in week 12. And there's already reports coming out of Ravens camp right now that not, well, their camp, not like training camp, but that he's going to be a big part of the offense going forward. And as of right now, we've already seen, I mean, he's second in the NFL in yards per carry, only behind Devon Achane. These two guys have been so similar. They've been such incredible playmakers. They're smaller guys, quicker. They're great in space. I can't imagine that if you're the Baltimore Ravens, you're looking at what Keaton Mitchell has done for your offense, and you say, we honestly need less of that. We need more Justice Hill in this backfield. They're going to be using Keaton Mitchell quite a bit more. And what's been interesting to see is that he's had double-digit fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games, while never actually getting more than 11 touches in any of those games. So now imagine what can happen if a guy like Keaton Mitchell is out there getting 15 or 16 touches, getting 3 or 4 receptions out in space. I know that this matchup against the Rams isn't necessarily a smash play by any means, but the Ravens are touchdown favorites at home. So we could see a lot more usage for Keaton Mitchell on the ground, something where the Ravens are ahead by a little bit and able to control the clock there just by running out the game. I've got him as my RB26 this week.
Yeah, totally fair. And I think it just comes kind of a range of outcomes conversation when you start looking at Keaton Mitchell and some of the other guys in that range. If you need a ceiling play, there are few guys that far down the rankings in that kind of RB3 range that possess the ceiling Keaton Mitchell has. So we're looking at a range of outcomes like this for Keaton Mitchell, where a guy like Chuba Hubbard's probably a little bit slimmer, like
Yeah.
safer floor, not as high of a ceiling. I love Keaton Mitchell. Like I said, we've been talking about this guy, mentioned his name a few times in the preseason, have been telling everybody to pick him up since week 8 before he even got activated off of IR. And we're slowly seeing that role start to grow. We know he's a playmaker. This Baltimore offense is desperate for a playmaking running back. And like we say all the time, rookie roles change out of the bye. Ravens have this really late bye, and we could hopefully see him come out this week with a bigger role than we've seen throughout the earlier part of the season.
All right, let's move on to the wide receiver position here. Dave, you and I each have a pair of rookies that we believe are our wide receiver starts of the week here in week 14. Why don't you start us off with Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I mean, singing a lot of the same tune that we've been singing all off season, or I'm sorry, all season, that we are targeting pass catchers that are playing against the Bills this year. It's a banged up defense. They've allowed some really big games to wide receivers, and let's just call it like it is, man. This game should be a shootout. Kansas City Chiefs against Buffalo Bills. This is one of those premier NFL matchups that we love to watch. Vegas is giving the game a 45.5 point over under, which is the second highest of the week. 1.5 point spread, meaning it should be a tight matchup where both teams are going to be throwing late in the game. And Rice has just taken over. I mean, I use the term league winner on Rice, which I reserve and I don't throw around willy-nilly. I used it on Rashee Rice a few weeks ago, and starting to look like that could be coming to fruition here. He's pulled 19 targets in his last 2 games. The second closest of anybody on the team is Travis Kelce with 12 targets. Rashee Rice is not only becoming the number 1 receiver, he's becoming the number 1 pass catcher right now for Patrick Mahomes. He scored a touchdown in 4 of his last 8 games. He looks like the wide receiver 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs right now. So I am very bullish on Rashee Rice in my rankings this week. Got him ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, got him ahead of Zay Flowers, got him ahead of Calvin Ridley. I have him ahead of Cooper Kupp. If you told me that I'd be ranking Rashee Rice ahead of Cooper Kupp in the preseason, I'd have called you crazy, but can't ignore what we're seeing right now. I mean, Rashee Rice has looked fantastic. So firing him up with utmost confidence in this matchup against Baltimore or against Buffalo.
I mean, we've just continued to see his role grow. And it's not even so much, yes, he has been good, but so much of it's just nobody else around him has been able to do anything. And it's almost kind of just been a process of elimination. It's like Patrick Mahomes is taking the SATs, and it's like, okay, Sky Moore is the wrong answer. Kadarius Toney's the wrong answer. Justin Watson's wrong, MVS wrong answer. Oh, the only one left here, Rashee Rice. All right, cool. So when it comes to wide receivers, that's
I don't
what's
want to
left.
discredit Rashee Rice, all right? I feel like You
I'm
know,
not discrediting him, but like
he has been good.
he's been good. He hasn't been great. And I think that a lot of the opportunity he has gotten has come from the other players around him in front of him playing absolutely horribly. And it's
Right.
gotten to a point now where we see it. Patrick Mahomes trusts him. And I mean, like, no player really does anything on their own without good circumstances, and he's really hit it. It's not a knock against Rashee Rice. It's just it's an understanding of these circumstances around him that should make us comfortable as fantasy managers.
Yeah. And I just love his after the catch abilities. That's something that we had kind of hoped for with Kadarius Toney, because like Kadarius Toney has those crazy, exhilarating after the catch abilities, and it hasn't really happened this year. And like they're not using Rashee Rice deep downfield or anything like that. They're just getting the ball in his hands and letting him do things. And that's what he does best. So I feel like the way they're using him is perfect for his skill set, using his big body in the red zone, using him and his after the catch abilities on screens and slants. I think that they've just done a masterful job of using him to maximize him to his full potential this year. Hopefully, we could see him develop into even better receiver down the road where he can start winning big boy routes and getting deep downfield and beating press coverage. We're not really seeing that right now, but it doesn't matter because they are just manufacturing ways to get the ball in his hands.
And that's so interesting to me, Dave, because back at SMU, like that's what he was doing. Was he was the deep ball guy and he was winning those routes. And I guess
Zay
it's one of
Flowers
those
too.
things. Yeah, it's one of those things that when you get to the NFL, it's a total change, and you've got to really refine your skill set there. It's not as easy to get off the line and to beat
Yeah.
some of these corners. Like these corners are not as slow as you know who you're going up against at SMU over there. So yeah, I think that it's been a really nice growth for Rashee Rice as the season has gone on, and you love to see that Patrick Mahomes is throwing him the ball. I'm going to give you my wide receiver start, and it's Jaxon Smith-Njigba, another rookie wide receiver, and it's very similar to Rashee Rice. It's we're seeing a rookie wide receiver, and his opportunity just continue to grow. This hasn't been something where DK Metcalf has been bad or that Tyler Lockett has been overwhelmingly bad, but I think we're seeing a small decline in Tyler Lockett. He hasn't been quite the same guy, and I do think that a little bit of what's happening here too is circumstance of Geno Smith is finding that he's more comfortable getting the ball to Jaxon Smith-Njigba on these simple, easy routes in the middle of the field, and that's kind of been his comfort zone. Going up against the San Francisco 49ers, the Seahawks are probably going to have to throw a ton just to keep up because they likely won't be able to slow things down. You've got Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet both have been DNPs this week, and they're dealing with injuries. So you're likely looking at DJ Dallas, who's already sort of the passing downs back for the Seahawks.
Mhm.
So this team is almost going to be in auto passing mode throughout the night. And we saw last week when the Seahawks played and they had to keep up with Dallas. You had 11 targets to Jaxon Smith-Njigba. He was the leading receiver for targets and target share in that game. DK Metcalf just also had an incredible, ridiculous game with 3 touchdowns and a bajillion yards. But you can start to see there's a comfortability that Geno Smith is getting with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And now going up against the 49ers, that's really the only part of their defense where they are somewhat susceptible to the other teams. And the Niners are allowing the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers right now. I don't have Jaxon Smith-Njigba as an absolute must start in my top 24, but he's my wide receiver 28 this week. And so if you're in a 3 wide receiver league or you need a flex, I'm very comfortable starting him this week.
Let me put you on the spot real quickly since I said I would start Rashee Rice over Cooper Cup. Are we putting JSN in over Cooper Cup? I don't know if you got your rankings pulled up right now.
Yeah.
I feel like that's,
Yeah.
I know this is a start show where we talk about, good things and positive things, and this
No,
player's
we don't.
trending up.
I
But
would never do that. I love negative, horrible things.
I mean, I think we have to have the Cooper Cup discussion at some point, right? Like, how many guys are we starting over Cooper Cup this week? And sorry to just completely go off on a tangent here, but like looking at my rankings, man, it's bleak for Cooper Cup. Like I'm okay starting guys like Jaden Reed, Gabe Davis, Brandon Cooks, Adam Thielen, both guys we mentioned, Rashee Rice and Jaxon Smith-Njigba. If his name wasn't Cooper Cup, I think we'd be talking about cutting this guy.
I mean, I've got him for this week as my wide receiver 29. So I've got him behind Diontae Johnson, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, a bunch of these guys that you listed. It's just one, he hasn't shown that he's that guy right now. 2, the Rams offense is not all that dynamic with Cooper Cup. It's been all about Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams. And 3, this matchup against the Ravens, that
Yeah.
secondary is really good, and it's going to be a tough defense. And we saw Matthew Stafford's best performance last week. his best performance of the season
Throwing the ball to
last week.
Demarcus Robinson and Ben Skoranek.
Bingo. Like it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with Cooper Kupp. And now you go and you give him a tougher defense to go up against. I struggle to be confident with him.
Look at that.
All right.
We're doing our start show right now, but we slipped a sit
Yeah.
in there just for anybody listening. Under
Whew.
promise, over deliver. What we do here.
Slip and sits, baby. Slip and sits. All right. Dave, give us your wide receiver sleeper of the week.
Yeah, so this one's a little deeper. I'm not saying that like he's an absolute must start, but Elijah Moore talked about him on our waiver show earlier in the week, and it's crazy, but Joe Flacco just loves this man. I quoted this on the waiver show as well, but Elijah Moore throughout his year or his career, he's now going into year 3. He's averaging almost 5 times as many yards per route run with Joe Flacco than he is with all these other quarterbacks. Joe Flacco just loves it, and his usage is different. Earlier in the season with Deshaun Watson or with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he was catching balls behind the line of scrimmage. He was catching screens. For some reason, he starts running these routes deep downfield, and he's getting targeted deep downfield with Joe Flacco. He had a season high and team high 12 targets last week. It's the first time this season that he has seen more than 9 targets in a single game. Amari Cooper not practicing with a concussion. He's going to have an uphill battle to play. So this could be another game where Elijah Moore is the wide receiver 1 with a quarterback who loves to throw him the ball. And going up against the Jags, they're giving up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So kind of crazy to say, but he looks like he could be the wide receiver 1 for the Browns this week. Going to see a lot of volume, but definitely a guy that you're only starting in your deeper leagues here. But assuming Justin Jefferson is back, which it looks like he's going to be, I'm firing Elijah Moore up ahead of Jordan Addison. I don't know if I really trust Josh Dobbs to support 2 wide receivers, starting him ahead of T. Higgins, who has kind of been an afterthought since Jake Browning has taken over, and starting him ahead of Tyler Lockett. You talked about JSN kind of carving out a bigger and bigger role. So, Elijah Moore slots in as kind of a high ceiling volume play as a wide receiver 3 this week.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I mean, I've got him over a bunch of those other guys you mentioned. I think the only like few factors that sort of worry me here a little bit is that I wonder if this becomes less of a shootout without Trevor Lawrence being there, and
Of
this
course,
becomes
yeah.
more of those like one of those just really ugly clock controlling games. It's hard. It's hard to argue with 12 targets in the game. It's hard to argue that. And what stinks for me to see though is just how inefficient those 12 targets still are. And he's wide receiver 31. So I mean that's baked into the ranking though. You've got him as a wide receiver 3. So I
The
think
real start on
more
the Browns
so.
is Jerome Ford, but that's just too obvious. I didn't want to take that.
Well, I think what we're getting at here more so is to set the proper expectations, right? It's you don't
Mhm.
go and start Elijah Moore as your wide receiver 2 and then say, well, these guys steer me the wrong way. You're putting him in there as your 3rd wide receiver or a flex as an upside guy in a PPR league specifically, because that's where you're going to be seeing those targets.
But some of those guys I mentioned, I throw some other names out there. Like I'm starting Elijah Moore ahead of Jacoby Myers. Noah Brown, who has a really tough matchup. I know,
Yeah.
with no Tank Dell, people are getting fired up about Noah Brown, but going up against the Jets, I'd take Elijah Moore there. So, yeah, I'm not saying like, pull Devonta Smith from your lineup and get Elijah Moore in there. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, in deeper
Right.
leagues, in 3 wide receiver leagues, I think that we're looking at a decent floor and ceiling for Elijah Moore this week.
I'm going to give you a guy that I think also has a pretty good floor, especially because of opportunity. We've been talking about how circumstances change things for wide receivers, and in deep leagues, I am willing to start Dontayvion Wicks as my wide receiver sleeper this week. I'm going a bit deeper here, Dave. I've got Dontayvion Wicks as my wide receiver 48 on the week, and I went and took a look at it. He's been a top 48 wide receiver in PPR each of the last 4 weeks, even with Christian Watson active. So I know that there's some hope that people have that Christian Watson might play. Guys, it's a hamstring. We typically do not see a quick turnaround on this where they're back in 1 week. This is likely going to be at least a 2-week absence for Christian Watson. I know there's a lot of hope. It's the holiday season. There's tons of hope for Christian Watson to be back out there. I don't think it actually happens. I do think that what we will see is an expanded role for Dontayvion Wicks. This is also a Packers team that they're looking beyond these next few weeks. They're looking at potentially a playoff run here. They need Christian Watson to be healthy for that. So Dontayvion Wicks is going to get a bit more opportunity in these games. And he's been having success on these like outbreaking routes and sort of intermediate routes. He's not necessarily the deep route guy, despite his high yards per catch. What he's been able to do is create big plays after the catch. What he's been doing is he's been getting the 4th most yards in the NFL after contact. This is one of these guys that, I mean, it's one of those things that was talked about a lot in his prospect profile as a rookie, is that he was a very physical receiver. Like, he was a guy that was willing to go win one-on-one matchups. And now we're seeing it in the NFL where he's going to take a slant. He's taking these out-breaking routes where he's able to break tackles, and especially on curls too. He's breaking tackles and he's turning what would be normally a 5 or 7 yard gain into a 15, 18 yard gain. And he's getting dragged down all the way at the end of the secondary by a safety. So this is a guy that I think is going to make the most of the targets he's getting from Jordan Love. And I don't know, we might talk a little bit more about that quarterback that I just mentioned, because there may be a quarterback start of the week for me that is on the same team as Dontayvion Wicks. Is that a good tease or what?
I'll bite my tongue then. I was about to drop some Jordan Love knowledge here, but I'll save that for later in the show. But yeah, Dontayvion Wicks.
Just do it when you give your quarterback start and say why you'd start that guy over Jordan Love.
I mean, what really it comes down for, looking at this Packers wide receiver room, it's crazy that they are all, and not just the wide receivers, the tight ends too. They are all either rookies or sophomores, year 1, year 2 guys. So, going into the season, we thought we had a very clear idea that it was going to be Christian Watson's the wide receiver 1, and Romeo Doubs is going to be the wide receiver 2. But this is still very much so a non-official pecking order. We don't really know what this is going to look like long term. We saw Doubs as a guy early in the season. Then we saw Christian Watson take over. Then we saw Jaden Reed take over. Then we saw Christian Watson take over again. But the wide receiver 1 role is still very much so up for grabs, especially with Christian Watson out of the picture. So I like Doubs. I favor him ever so slightly in my rankings. But as a deep sleeper, don't be surprised one bit if Dontayvion Wicks has a big game this weekend.
Yeah, he was actually the guy that I was going out and grabbing off waivers when I noticed that a lot of people were going after Parker Washington after the Christian Kirk injury, and we didn't get a chance to talk about that on the Monday show. But considering it's going to be CJ Beathard, and considering that the schedule gets a little bit more challenging there, I really like the idea of at least having a productive Dontayvion Wicks with a productive Jordan Love over, who knows, the next 2 to 3 weeks while Christian Watson is out. So, yep, I'll fire him up in some deeper leagues. Yep. Why don't we go to our quarterbacks here? Dave, I need us to do some fact checking here at Football Guys, and I want to find out, how many times when Justin Fields has been active have you listed him as your quarterback start of the week?
Week 1. And then I forget the other week, but when he came back from injury and was playing against the Detroit Lions, and then I'm going to do it again right now, playing against the Detroit Lions. He has had the Lions number over the last few years. He has rushed for 100 plus yards in 3 straight games against the Lions. He's averaging 26.2 points per game against the Lions throughout his career. And last time he played the Lions at home at Soldier Field, he scored over 40 fantasy points. You just got to accept that this is a trend. When Justin Fields plays against the Lions, he balls out. And he was my start of the week last time he played against them, went for 26 points. And he is my start of the week this time, playing against the Lions again. And what it comes down to, the Lions have given up the 5th most rushing yards to quarterbacks of any team in the league. And they've also given up the 5th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. So they have a pretty good defense, but their offense is so good that it puts quarterbacks in a position where they have to do things late in the game and they rack up a lot of points. The Bears defense has stepped up, and that's my one thing that would maybe make me pump the brakes here a little bit. This could be a low scoring game. The over-under is just 41.5. The Bears defense is getting a little bit better. The Lions defense has shown some exciting promise as well, but the ceiling for Justin Fields here is so high. We could be looking at another 28, 30, possibly even a 40-point outing here from Justin Fields. So starting him ahead of Justin Herbert, who hasn't looked too great over the last few weeks and has a pretty tough matchup against Denver. And I'm starting him against another quarterback, but I won't say his name because I don't want to take the wind out of your sails, Alfredo.
It's perfectly fine. I've got Justin Fields as my quarterback 7, then Brock Purdy at 8, and then Jordan Love, my quarterback start of the week, at 9.
Wow, I actually have Purdy a spot ahead of Fields going up against Seattle, but I mean, they're the same tier.
That might change.
I totally
that might change
as
the week goes
between
on.
Fields and Purdy.
Yeah. I mean, that might change as the week goes on. But for my quarterback start of the week, Jordan Love going up against the New York Giants. This was an interesting kind of correlation that I found here. So I'll start off with this. First of all, Jordan Love, we've seen that I think the questions are done. Like, I think we can just all admit Jordan Love is a good NFL quarterback. We don't need to be worried about that anymore. He's been a top, and at least for fantasy too, he's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in each of his last 3 games, top 12 fantasy quarterback in 5 of his last 7 games. This is a guy that you can trust in your lineup. Now, going up against the New York Giants, so this is interesting. The Giants have definitely been a team of two halves. And while the defense has improved, so is the offense. And what has happened here now is that since the Giants have become a more competitive team, opponents are passing the ball more. Early on in the season, opponents didn't have to pass the ball. They were usually taking advantage of the Giants' mistakes on offense, getting defensive touchdowns, being able to run the ball pretty easily. Now all of a sudden, the Giants are scoring points and teams have to actually pass a bit more. So listen to this, Dave. Weeks 1 through 9, opposing teams were averaging 31 pass attempts per game. Not very high. That's actually quite low in comparison to the rest of the league. Over the last 4 weeks, though, while the team has been a bit more competitive, opposing teams are averaging 41 pass attempts per game, which would put them in the top 3 in the league. Jordan Love has been a top 12 quarterback in 8 of the 9 games where he's had to throw at least 31 pass attempts. So the only time where Jordan Love really has not been a startable fantasy quarterback is when it's a blowout win and he's only throwing the ball about 25 times. So for the most part, he's a guy that if he's throwing you at least 31 pass attempts or even getting closer to that 41 number like we've seen lately with the Giants, he's not only a top 12 quarterback, but he becomes a guy who's getting into the top 6, top 7 on some of these games. So I've got him as my quarterback 9 this week. I understand that might be a little bit higher than where consensus has him, but I do think that he's pretty comfortably in my top 10 this week.
Hey, he's my quarterback 9 too. Look at
Hey,
us. Look at
look at
us,
us.
Alfredo.
Who'd have
Look at
thought?
us. Yeah.
It's a Christmas miracle, David.
I wrote about Jordan Love in my 3 up, 3 down this article as somebody trending up. I wrote about him as a trending up player early in the season, and then around mid-season, I wrote about him as a trending down player. Now he is a trending up player. Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap.
Snip, snap.
Can't really make up. But I mean, it has very much so been a tale of 3 seasons for Jordan Love. To start the season, through week 4, he was the QB3. Only Justin Herbert and Josh Allen were outscoring him. He was averaging 22.1 points per game. And then weeks 5 through 9, he cooled off significantly. And we were saying, maybe we were wrong on Jordan Love. He averaged just 13.4 points per game. But now, over the last 4 games, he is averaging 22.5 points per game, which is more than he did in his early season tear. So, yeah, you're going to say, fire up Jordan Love this week. I like the matchup against the Giants, and he gave a lot of reasons and as to why we should be playing him against the Giants. But looking at the rest of his schedule, he's got the Giants this week, then he's got the Buccaneers, then he's got the Panthers, then he's got the Vikings. I am looking at Jordan Love as a plug-and-play QB1 for the rest of the season.
I love the Packers passing attack for the rest of the season. If you're able to, if you have Christian Watson, great, hopefully he comes back healthy. But if you were able to grab Dontayvion Wicks off waivers or Jaden Reed earlier in the season, Jordan Love, like these are guys, Dave, like you mentioned, they become league winners based on these playoff schedules that they have. Let's go to the tight end position, our final 2 players that are going to be starts of the week here. Dave, kick us off with your tight end start of the week.
This is another guy I've mentioned on a few start shows this year as a guy that I like, Gerald Everett. I think he's a very talented tight end. Really liked him coming into the league. Just a good athlete, a big physical guy. And I know, if you look at the matchup or if you look at the points allowed to positions, Denver's given up the most points, the most yards, and the 3rd most receptions to tight ends. And I know somebody in the comments is going to be like, but Dave, the Broncos defense has gotten better. Well, it hasn't gotten better against tight ends. If you look just at the last 4 games, they're giving up even more points to tight ends than they were earlier in the season. For whatever reason, this Denver defense, although it is pretty good, has been pretty susceptible to tight ends. And the Chargers they're desperate for somebody to step up. Like somebody has to play second fiddle to Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's great, but he cannot do it all. Quentin Johnston isn't doing much of anything. We saw Stone Smart stepping up. Who's the other guy? Alex Erickson, I think, is a
Wide
name.
receiver.
Yeah, I mean,
It is a name. It's a person.
Darius
name.
Davis. We're getting deep in the trenches trying to find somebody out here. And I think Gerald Everett, he's a veteran that could be that guy. Nothing crazy, but his usage over the last couple of weeks, he's seen 9 targets over the last 2 games, and he's had 40 plus yards in each matchup. We've seen him fall into the end zone a few times. So again, not like a guy that I am desperately trying to plug into my lineup. If you start looking at the tight end landscape this year, it seems like there's like 10 guys that are kind of just set them and forget them guys that you don't have to worry about too much. But if you don't have one of those guys and start getting a little bit deeper down the list, Gerald Everett is the guy that I like, and I am starting ahead of Kyle Pitts and Kate Otten and Brevin Jordan and Juwan Johnson. So,
Yep.
probably not starting him in like your 10-team leagues, but in 12, 14-team leagues, not only am I starting him, but he might be a guy that you could just pick up off the waivers and plug in your lineup this week.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I know that everyone claims nobody's available in my leagues, but a couple of these guys that we're listing as starts, whether it's Gerald Everett or Dontayvion Wicks, Elijah Moore, a bunch of these guys are still out there on waivers. So just go double check if you need a spot start for the week. I'm going to give you my tight end start of the week. And Dave, by the way, I have Gerald Everett as my tight end 12. So I think you're right
Nice.
on there. My start of the week, though, Isaiah Likely, I've got him as my tight end 8 this week. And I know it's a bit of a lofty expectation, but I am expecting a big week for the Baltimore Ravens here, going up against a Rams defense that isn't really that great. They're not bad, but they're not great. And especially against tight ends, this is another team that isn't very good against them. And you're talking about a Ravens team that has had an extra week to prepare. They had the bye week. They're coming out against the Rams. Bye weeks matter, Dave. We talked about this. Offenses get to add new wrinkles with players that maybe haven't had all those starting reps. Guys like Keaton Mitchell, guys like Isaiah Likely that need to be a little bit more ingrained into the game plan. And that's what we're going to see here. We already saw that he was running routes on 83% of Lamar Jackson's dropbacks when he did fill in for Mark Andrews earlier on in the season. But now going up against the Rams, who, like I mentioned, not good against tight ends. They're giving up the 6th most points to tight ends in fantasy. And the Rams have allowed at least 13 PPR points to tight ends in 4 of the last 5 games. This is a good matchup for Isaiah Likely. Once again, it's just a good team in the Baltimore Ravens, getting plenty of time to prepare and starting to add new wrinkles to their offense because they know that's what they have to do if they're going to be competing, not just for the number 1 seed in the AFC, but for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, no pushback from me there. Isaiah Likely was a guy that we talked about as a priority waiver pickup when Mark Andrews went down, and he's got a good matchup this week. So, like that call out. Can we sneak in one other sleeper, like a deep, deep, deep sleeper tight end, a guy that we talked about briefly in the waiver wire show? Brevin Jordan?
We slipped a sit, so why don't we slip a sleeper?
Yeah, why not? Brevin Jordan is a guy that we had talked about as well. So, like, if you're really hurting, if you're in a deep league where a bunch of jerks are hoarding tight ends, and there's some guy that has 2 or 3 tight ends on his roster, and you're really, really hurting this week, Brevin Jordan is another guy who we saw his role grow a little bit last week after Tank Dell went out. Tough matchup with the Jets, but they do a lot better against wide receivers than they do against tight ends. So again, if you're in a deep league where people are hoarding multiple tight ends and you find yourself scouring the waiver wire and Isaiah Likely is not available and Gerald Everett isn't available, maybe getting a little deeper down the list, Brevin Jordan is another kind of sleeper that you might be able to look at this week.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to consider him, make sure that you're paying attention to what is going on with Dalton Schultz and his
Mhm.
injury. Because if he's going to be out this week, Brevin Jordan immediately becomes one of those guys that's kind of there in the fringe, the top 15 tight end. We saw how athletic he looked last week. So I like that
Yep.
call, Dave. Good job slipping. Good job slipping it in. Well,
Oh,
we, well, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do
on
that.
that note, thank you for tuning in.
Now, sorry, Joe. That's the show, guys. That's the show. We'll see you all next time. Adios.